What does King William IV, Frances Ellen Watkins Harper, Sandusky, and the Time Machine have in common? The drama continues to snowball, and I'm not mad at it. Hey everyone, this is D, Movieman, fellow cinephile, popcorn addict, and emerging film critic, coming to you with reliable recaps, reviews, and reactions. And today, of course, I'm coming to you all with yet another episode of The Gilded Age, Season 3, Episode 6, If You Want to Cook an Omelette. This episode is directed by Deborah Kampmeyer and written by Julian Fellows and Sonia Warfield. So let me just start off by saying that this was a very interesting episode to start off watching because for whatever reason, the audio language situation was messed up. And I was trying to figure out why Spanish was playing and why the characters were speaking in Spanish. And I was just kind of like, okay. So I was switching the languages back and forth and it wasn't working. So finally, I go switch it over to Spanish language. And the Spanish language is giving English. So they're speaking in the English language on the Spanish setting, and then vice versa for the English. I was like, I guess. But okay, that was a very unique way to start this episode. So we officially kick off this episode at Sidmouth in England, where Bertha has just arrived. As Bertha is asking Hector questions about the estate and her accommodations, well, Lady Sarah is just steamrolling her way through the conversation because every time she asks him something, she just jumps in and speaks for him. And that's when Bertha realizes, oh, okay. That's the dynamic we have going on here. She informs Bertha that she will be staying in the King's Room, which formerly belonged to King William IV, who was the monarch before the current sovereign, Queen Victoria. And this whole dynamic is mainly because Hector's parents died young, and it's not like they really had the best relationship prior to that, and as a result, Lady Sarah became the de facto head of household. And it's clear that's a position she's unwilling to give up. We already know that Bertha is not the type to take this kind of situation lying down, but believe me, it gets much, much worse when Miss Andre overhears Lady Sarah talking about how she's wearing Gladys down, basically like she's some kind of puppy dog to be trained. She relays this to Bertha, and Bertha's like, oh, bet. Which means that at the next dinner, Bertha is very interested in addressing Lady Sarah's thoughts on anti-suffrage. And Bertha just wants to know, so are women stupider than men? Are they not equipped for important decisions? And Lady Sarah says, no, they should stay to their proper sphere. And Bertha's like, so should Queen Victoria have remained in her proper sphere and not have accepted the crown?
Clock that T.
Clock it.
Clock that T.
Clock it.
Clock that T.
When it comes to addressing the monarchy, that's a no-no. So Lady Sarah backs down. Bertha has made it clear that she has a voice and she is going to be heard while she's here. Then we see Gladys warning Bertha that Lady Sarah is not going to respond well to all of this. And Bertha is just making it clear to Gladys that you need to step up, you need to clap back, so to speak, and make clear that you are the Duchess. You are the one running all of this, not her. Basically, Gladys needs to become indispensable to her husband, and if she shows an interest in the estate, which has been a big part of this marriage in the first place, then to Hector, he'll really see the benefits of having Gladys as his wife. So Gladys takes her mother's advice, and we see her asking Hector if she can learn more about the estate, which Lady Sarah is not a fan of. And of course, she's asking Bertha if she has put her daughter up to this, and Bertha's just kind of like, what do you want me to say? But on Hector's end, he seems to be pretty pleased about this development, which gives me hope. I think that we're turning the corner here. At the next dinner, we see Gladys having a conversation with Lord Mildmay regarding her desire to plant new English trees to celebrate Queen Victoria's Golden Jubilee. In other words, the celebration of Queen Victoria's 50th year as Sovereign of England. But of course, Lady Sarah has already made all the arrangements, so she shuts that down, and then she rises to signal that all the women leave the dining table. And to this, Gladys asks if Lady Sarah is unwell. And Lady Sarah's just like, well, why would I be? Well, considering that I'm Duchess, and I did not stand or signal for any of the other women to leave the room, I wondered if you might be unwell. I mean, for what other reason would you be standing? And you can see Lady Sarah's like, and Gladys is just staring at her. Bertha's looking like, And so eventually, Lady Sarah's just like, okay. And she goes and she sits down, clearly embarrassed. And I was just like,
now check that.
now this is what I like to see. I didn't think this was going to be the development between Bertha and Gladys, but them as a duo, as a force, going up against Lady Sarah, I'm here for it. And considering Lord Mildmay's reaction to this, it's safe to say he's a fan as well. The next day, we see Bertha having a conversation with Hector where she is emphasizing the importance of Gladys and his relationship together, and especially as the heads of Sidmouth. And basically, she's making clear that, look, you let her take the reins, it's going to be disaster. But if you and your wife, you and the Duchess come together, look, so many great things can come out of this. So, her daughter has a great heart and a great mind, and if he only pays attention to it, this union might bear much fruit, so to speak. And shortly after this, we see Bertha departing, and we can see that despite all the foolishness and all the drama that has occurred, especially between them, Bertha is very much proud of the woman that Gladys is becoming, and I think she just recognizes the position she's in now, and them having this time to come together, I think has just reminded her of what it means to be a mother to her child. And I think that was necessary because we already know, the chess piece situation, that wasn't great, but this was cool. So we can see that as Bertha departs, Gladys is definitely feeling some emotions, but it's all for the best. And because of her mother's intervention, I think Gladys is going to be on a very good foot with Sidmouth and her husband, and especially Lady Sarah. Let me also mention, though, that Bertha is likely unaware that she is traveling with the source of the gossip leaks, as far as we know. Mrs. Bruce has combed through the newspapers, she's cross-referenced everything, and going off of what she's assessed, the only person that would know about the information that's being leaked is Bertha's maid. So now, the trap has to be set so they can catch their culprit. Now from here, we would technically be jumping over to the Russell household, but said head of this household has made his way to J.P. Morgan's estate, where he has gathered with some of the other gentlemen to resolve the Illinois Central Line issue. Since there is no majority owner, that means that progress is at a standstill. Something has to be worked out before these other banks end up collapsing, and we get a whole nother panic started up again. So J.P. Morgan says, y'all ain't leaving until somebody owns 51% of this company. As far as the other shareholders, we see the Merrick brothers and Mr. Sage, along with Clay, who is now partnered with Mr. Sage. I'm just kind of like, I don't know what I'm supposed to say to that, because you so easily discarded this man. You think he's supposed to just go slink off and not have another job? I felt no ways about that. It might seem shiesty, but I also feel like what George did was also shiesty, so boo-hoo. JP Morgan has been back and forth with George regarding his handling of the shares and all of this, but in this situation, he's the best man to handle this situation, because Sage, it's not gonna work. The Merricks are obviously very iffy as well, but they agreed to sell George enough shares to make him the majority owner. Now, they can't make this official until they actually return back to New York with their lawyers present. Unfortunately, this gives Clay just enough time to spill information regarding where all of George's bodies are buried. which means that the information regarding Russell Industries being on the verge of collapse has quickly made its way to the front page of the newspaper. Naturally, George knows that Clay is the source because this is only information he would know, and he also feels that he likely should have had Clay taken out, which I'm almost certain he's serious about. But because of the news, George's share prices have now dropped. The Merricks are like, we're pulling out of this. And George is going to have to scramble to come up with the money to fix all of this. But even with George being unable to really find money from any other source, he makes it clear that he would rather watch his business burn to the ground than concede defeat. So we'll see how this turns out, but listen, one thing we know about George and Bertha is that they don't go down without a fight, and even if they do go down, they're gonna find their way back up again. So I already know what time it is. Now, in the meantime, Larry is still out in Arizona trying to lock down these deals. But when it comes to his fiance, I think the jig is up. Which basically begins when Oscar mentions that Larry saw Maud Beaton while he was out. When Marian attempts to ask Jack about what went on and, them going to Delmonico's, the man does not have a poker face. So now Marian knows that somebody's been lying. So later at dinner, Marian brings up the subject of Maud Beaton again, and Oscar is making it clear that, the woman who stole all their money, she is back in town and she's working at a club. Now, when Agnes asks if it's a respectable establishment, Oscar makes it clear that it's basically a house of ill repute. It's all kind of freaky, sneaky going on, to say the least. So we see Marian confronting Oscar, and he's trying to calm her down, and he's just letting her know, hey, he was likely just socializing. I don't think you should jump to conclusions, but considering Marian's history, especially with Mr. Rakes, womp, 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 she is not feeling good about this, so jump she shall. So when it comes down to it, she realizes it's time to break the engagement, which, is not really going to help her case when it comes to social dynamics, but it doesn't matter. It's a wrap for her. Agnes is happy. Ada is not. But she writes a letter. She delivers it to church. And that's that. At least until Larry gets back. And I don't think he'll be pleased about this development. And to make a long story short regarding this whole Jack situation, Agnes is still snooping. She wants to know what's really going on. Armstrong knows what time it is, and she basically delivers the information regarding all the money that Jack has made to Agnes. And basically it's just like, what is this? Like, this man is a whole millionaire, and he's working alongside us. Like, how are we supposed to feel about this? Now, I don't think anyone else really cares, but this is Armstrong. And if we're going to be fair, despite the fact that that's his home, it doesn't really make sense. And when Agnes discovers what's going on, she is not pleased. She's not happy about it. And she basically tells Ada, hey, what is this? Ain't got time for it. Get your house in order. And because Ada is trying to make sense of everything that's going on, she returns to Madame Skamkova. And things are going okay. But of course, things go awry because Madame Dashkova is mentioning how Luca has, a certain phrase in Italian to offer her. And Ada's just kind of like, Italian? That's weird. I mean, he didn't speak Italian. Well, the thing is, the newspaper had a misprint and they said Luca instead of Luke. She assumed he was Italian. So you know what that means? Scam, scam, scam. We knew this, but Ada's like, wow. Alrighty. I've been played. It is now time to bow out as gracefully as I can. You got me. And of course, we see Ada and Agnes having a very poignant moment where Ada's just breaking down and she's just like, good gracious, like she's allowed her grief to, lead her into this situation and she just can't handle the fact that he's not here anymore. And Agnes is just trying to make it clear to her, hey, you'll always have him because he'll always be in your heart. But, That's easier said than done. And as someone who has dealt with a lot of loss and a lot of grief, I do my best. Time heals a lot of wounds, but man, there are some days where I'm just like, what's the point of this anymore? But the most important thing is that Agnes is there for her sister, and that's always going to be the most significant part of their relationship. Even when they go back and forth, underneath it, there is a sisterly bond and there is a love that binds them together. And it's always great to see that. But as far as this whole Jack situation, Agnes knows that they cannot have a Rockefeller in livery. So once she hears that, we see Ada having a conversation with Jack. I knew it was coming, but it's still not nice. I mean, it's not fun to see. It's just not. And Ada really is trying to be motivational. She's trying to make it clear that, hey, you've made a great achievement, but it's time for you to make your way in the world. It just doesn't make sense for you to remain here. And for Jack, this is his home, this is his family. And she's like, you can still, you're still a part of this, but you have to venture out. You have to live your life now that you've been given that opportunity. And Jack understands it, but it was tough to see because it's just like, and then you have to venture out, and then you have all this money. And I mean, it's not a bad situation to be in, but it's just kind of like, it's an identity crisis. So I'm hoping that this isn't the end of us seeing Jack. I don't think it is, but it's just kind of like, So we also find out that Jack has delivered all these envelopes to everyone in the household, and it's basically been him paying back everyone the money that they lent him for the patent and the whole situation in the first place. And even for Armstrong, who has done, virtually nothing to support him, he's even done that. So yeah, Jack, good people. So I'm hoping for the best for him going forward. So jumping over to the Scotts, we see Peggy having that conversation with Dr. Kirkland, which is basically everything involving Thomas' fortune and everything that went down. And Dr. Kirkland is understanding. He's like, look, we all have a past, stuff happens, all that matters is right now. However, there are some things he's not aware of, and I'm pretty sure this is going to come back to bite Peggy in her behind. Now, because the interview with Frances Ellen Watkins Harper went so well, she will also be making her way to Brooklyn for a chat with Peggy and some of the women. And Dr. Kirkland is, asking if his mother can join. And I was just like, okay. But, we already know how that's going to go. But Peggy's like, I guess. And so we see everyone gathered together, listening to Frances Ellen Watkins Harper, sharing her thoughts on women's suffrage. And we already know. We already know. Now, let me also say that Frances Ellen Watkins Harper was an abolitionist. She was a suffragist. She was a poet. She was a temperance activist. Shout out to Ada. She was a teacher, public speaker, writer. She did all the things. And let me also add that in 1845, she became one of the first African American women to be published in the United States. Elizabeth, of course, is old school. She doesn't understand all this women's rights stuff. She feels like women have their lane, much like Lady Sarah. And she feels like it's more important to emphasize the black man's vote instead. And Peggy's just kind of like, we can do both. Complacency yields nothing. So they're disagreeing. And naturally, this is not helping Elizabeth's thought or belief that Peggy is not good enough for her son and definitely not good enough for their family. Unfortunately, the complication here is that Peggy recognizes that her feelings for William are stronger than her frustration and disdain with his mother, which is definitely going to complicate things as they continue on. And lastly, we circle around to Oscar, who has his own solo arc throughout this episode, and we see Oscar finally confronting Maud Beaton, or who we thought was Maud Beaton. They step aside into a private room. She's thinking he's ready to get it popping. I don't know if she realizes that she probably doesn't. But anyway, regardless, there's a bigger situation to handle here, which is, where's my mama's money? What happened? What went down? I need some answers. She basically admits that this whole thing was set up by Crowther, who we saw last season. And after that whole situation was done with, he left Maude with nothing. So she is stuck working off debts through prostitution. I mean, there's no other way to say it, but yeah, she's kind of trapped in this vicious cycle, and it's something that has started since she was 12. Her father lost her in a card game, and you already know what that means. So her life has been a series of unfortunate events, and it's not surprising that these are her present circumstances. Oscar is obviously very conflicted about this because he admits that he wants to hurt her bad. But he is also self-aware enough to recognize the bigger picture here. So when it comes down to it, he knows, or he discovers from Maude/Dolly, that she has a sister in Sandusky, Ohio. So for the first time, I think, in the entirety of this series, Oscar actually does the right thing. Something he really does not have to do, but he does anyway. He asks Maude to meet him at the train station, and she is shocked when he gives her $100 and a ticket to Sandusky, Ohio. She's confused as to why he's doing this, and he is confused as well. But again, bigger picture, and he feels that this is the right thing to do. She is grateful. She's shocked, but she really does appreciate this. And considering that this is the last time we're going to see her, he's given her a new lease on life. And I think ultimately that's the most important thing about this whole situation. And then, of course, we see Oscar having a conversation with John about everything that has happened. And he's asking him, do you think it was foolish of me to do what I did? And he's like, no, because she was a victim just as much as you were in that situation. And so at this point, Oscar is just thankful for John's support. You know, they're not together anymore. I wasn't quite sure about it before, but, you know, he's very grateful for John's support. He's in a good space. John is in a good space. And, you know, great things are still to come. However, John mentions that he has a new investor to go meet. So as he turns and waves to Oscar, he makes his way to the street so he can cross. I kid you not. I don't know why, but in my head, as he was standing there for that split second, I thought of the Time Machine. And I was thinking of that scene where the main character is trying to save his wife or fiance, who will become his wife, from losing her life as a result of a mugger, only to realize by avoiding that, as he goes to buy her a ring and, you know, he's thinking everything is fixed, unbeknownst to him, she is run over by a horse and carriage. And he realizes that this is something he cannot prevent no matter what he does. And that is exactly what happens. A horse and carriage, runaway horse and carriage, collides into John, which means that most likely it's a wrap on his life and his relationship with Oscar. Oh boy. Even when Oscar is technically in a good space, he's doing the right thing, he just cannot avoid those L's. Now, in this case, he's not really the L taker in theory, but the man just can't catch a break. What can I say? I'm just kind of used to it at this point. And that closes out episode 6, If You Want to Cook an Omelette. Whoa. There's a lot going on. And this season is giving what needs to be given. I will say that. But that whole thing with John, it's like I didn't see it coming, but for a split second, I thought of something that I thought was unrelated and somehow end up being the exact. That was wild. You know, I'm here for Gladys and Bertha coming together. I love the fact that Gladys and Hector seem to be getting on a good foot. George, I don't know what to say because this kind of is his fault at this point. So I hope things turn out well for Jack. But outside of that, I need to hurry up and jump on to the next episode because we are almost at the end of the season and I still have this and the next recap to get through. So as always, please let me know your thoughts regarding this episode and my recap in general. Until next time. Woo! I can only imagine what's going to happen. So, once again, this is D, Movie Man, signing off, and I'll see you at the movies.